Good evening, welcome. I'm John. I'm the event director at Literati Bookstore. We're pleased to welcome Kazim Ali in support of the Voice of Sheila Chandra, with special guests this evening, Jenny Johnson and Sam Sachs. Some housekeeping first. We're in a webinar, as you can tell, so we can't see you or hear you, but we know that you're there. The chat is also closed, but you may want to keep your chat window open. During the event, I will be dropping links to purchase books and more in the chat window. And you can submit questions using the Q&A feature that's available to you in the webinar at any time. And I will read a selection of those questions at the conclusion of the conversation. As a reminder, you can purchase the Voice of Sheila Chandra on our website. And I'll include a link in the chat, as I mentioned. And if you're watching later, there are, of course, links to purchase books from Literati Bookstore in the YouTube description below. As a reminder, thousands of titles are available for curbside pickup if you live in Southeast Michigan. And in lieu of a book purchase, we'd also ask that you consider a $5 donation to sustain our virtual programming. So whether you'd like to think of that as this week's or this month's or this year's subscription to our programming, you can make donations at literatibookstore.com/donation. Otherwise, we simply thank you for your attendance this evening or this afternoon or this morning, depending on where and when in the world you may be joining us from. So without further ado, I will introduce tonight's poets in reverse order of how they will be reading. So Kazim Ali was born in the United Kingdom and has lived transnationally in the United States, Canada, India, France, and the Middle East. His books encompass multiple genres, including the volumes of poetry Inquisition, Skyward, winner of the Ohiana Book Award in Poetry, The Far Mosque, winner of the Alice James Books New England, New York Award, The 40th Day, All One's Blues, and the cross-genre texts Bright Felon and Wind Instrument. His novels include the recently published The Secret Room, a string quartet. Among his books of essays are the hybrid memoir Silver Road, Essays, Maps, and Calligraphies, and Fasting for Ramadan, Notes from a Spiritual Practice. He's also an accomplished translator and an editor of several anthologies and books of criticism. After a career in public policy and organizing, Ali taught at various colleges and universities, including Oberlin, Davidson, St. Mary's College of California, and Naropa University. He's currently a professor of literature at the University of California, San Diego. His newest books are a volume of 3 long poems entitled The Voice of Sheila Chandra and a memoir of his Canadian childhood, Northern Light. Sam Sachs is a queer Jewish poet and educator. He's the author of Madness, winner of the National Poetry Series, and Bury It, winner of the James Laughlin Award from the Academy of American Poets. He's received fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts, Lambda Literary, and the MacDowell Colony. He's a 2-time Bay Area Grand Slam champion, author of 4 chapbooks, and winner of the Gulf Coast Prize, the Iowa Review Award, and American Literary Award. His poems have appeared in BuzzFeed, The New York Times, The Nation, Poetry Magazine, and other journals. And Jenny Johnson is the author of In Full Velvet. Her honors include a Whitting Award, a Hodder Fellowship at Princeton University, and an NEA Fellowship. Her poems have appeared in the New York Times, New England Review, Waxwing, and elsewhere. She's an assistant professor of creative writing at West Virginia University, and she is on faculty of the Rayner Writing Workshop, Pacific Lutheran University's low residency MFA program. She lives in Pittsburgh with her cat named Shrimp. Please join me. They won't be able to hear you, but they will be able to feel in spirit your applause. So please join me in welcoming Kazim, Jenny, and Sam into your living rooms.
Well, I'll get things started. Thank you, John and Literati Bookstore. And it's such a pleasure to get to read with 2 poets whose work I very much admire. And I'm especially excited to be a part of Kazim's launching of this book, The Voice of Sheila Chandra. And I've been hanging out with this book, and Kazim, I wanted to read 2 of my favorite lines about sound in here. And then I'm gonna, because it's been making me think about sound.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So just a little teaser for people who are listening. You do not want to say, but sing. What represses unhomes in the sound. And those are just some lines pulled from the title poem. And so I'm gonna kick things off by reading a poem from my book In Full Velvet that opens it, and And it's called Dappled Things. And it's a poem where I was thinking too about like how to make sense through sound by talking back to Gerard Manley Hopkins' poem Pied Beauty. I was thinking in this poem about how to celebrate difference in the natural world. So I'm just going to read an excerpt from this poem, and then I'll read a few new pieces. Dappled Things. Thank you, day, for dappled things, for ambrosia beetles streaking skylines inside a maple, for pansies speckled as a painter's sleeve, for russet-crusted sidewalks of lichen, airy springs of fiery structured fringe, for pink corpuscles making midges soon to burst out the undersides of leaves. Thank you for all that still somehow counter, original, spare, and strange, for the brightening swell of a honeybee's sting, for the alien markings on my girlfriend's cheek and how they form a perfect triangle. Thank you for the risen stars on the skin of an apple, which I slice into fine, thin crescents, for dapple is a word derived from apple, and apple once meant any fruit at all, born from a tree, lemon, fig, persimmon. Thank you, road apple, finger apple, earth apple, for all that apple was before apple acquired a stigma for being forbidden, marked, dappled, shadowed, grappling, stamped, juice, controlled, smudging of what twinkles unthinkably. And because I'm minion to gay old music, thanks gentle hop for thisness, for teaching attention, how to mark hard word bodies with stress, acute glyphs, blue scores, for reckoning the risks and discipline's rod between sheets of loose-leafed linen. You knew few might hear your coded address. Do I look hard enough to receive? I am not moved by God, but I am moved by this, to experience the largesse. What you look hard at seems to look hard at you. Oh, to be marked reciprocally, yes, please, across, above, below, and with. And I'll pause there on that. All right, I got a few new ones. And also thanks to Kazim, because there's been some meetings we've had over the summer that has helped me generate work. So I'm really grateful. Brother Wish. This one's called Brother Wish. I know the systems hurt us all when the visibly repressed man with elliptically oppressive follow-up questions asks me directly, how do you write about the body? Even if this wasn't a video call, I'm not sure we'd ever share a room in which we could hear each other. If we were dogs, he'd have already pissed on every tree that encircles me. I wish he'd think to ask, how do you write about a body? Or how do you speak from a kaleidoscope of shapes? I've rarely seen her, this body as the, exploding a frozen burrito as I have been known to do in the faculty microwave. It seems to me that to be the body in all the hallowed rooms of one's life is to miss so many cues. For example, how many poems aren't addressing you at all? Dear, not brother, I wish for you to know how many brothers this dyke loves. There's the one I like to do morning pages with, preferably on a porch, his jean jacket worn in from giving good hugs. The one who texts back in complete sentences. A counter to doom is waking to the voice of my brother who sings Enya to himself in a house we sometimes share, and coming home late to sweet plantains in the oven, being asked, what's good? And dear to me, the one who sets a timer for equal confessions, not blood relatives, but if we were racing up the gravel hill as kids in the split second where he surges ahead and I feel for the first time my hips betray me, and so in a panic, grab the back of his t-shirt with my fist to pull his body back too. He would know it isn't personal. It isn't personal. Close on kind of sexy poems. I feel like I'm in the right crowd for that. This one's called Submission. I can't remember ever not wanting this, clenching a painter's cap out a car window, the one I chose as a kid to wear backwards, sun-stunned in the back seat, so many numbing miles to go, the cap flapping, my fist tightening as it whipped and whirled and pirouetted in the wind. Above the brim in letters airbrushed were the words, let's get physical. Physical, a world whizzed by, a voice inside dared me to do it. Where it went when I let go, I didn't see, though I felt a fluttering as the hat was sucked up and back in the pummeling air, fast into the open mouth of a tunnel invisible beneath the bay. In this room where we're playing, my arms have been up for a while. I'm losing count of the smacks the falls make, how much pressure you've delivered to each of my shoulders. When you tear the top off a marigold, there are so many fine, loose strings. When I lose my grip this time, there's the slap of your voice. Did I ask you to let go? And I'll close on this one. It's called Petal. I have a friend who measures desire by stillness, who is most turned on by the person in the room who meditates without flinching. The librarian too, in the manuscripts division, handling the patron who can't seem to stay seated, warns, I will serve you the smallest items first. As a knit sweater slides off a chair's back into a loose knot. All day, we could have watched clusters of blue-bottled gentians flexing their umbrellas open and shut as bumblebees submerged head first into one bloom after another, dizzy subspaces partially open, paper dressing rooms, trying on things till they'd wrapped themselves in a good dusting of pollen. Everywhere, intimate containers seem to be in motion. The raised bed full of squash flowers, the black latex glove masking the bare hand ladling bowls of wedding soup for the lunch crowd, my quick pedal revved by the world. And now I pass it to Sam.
Oh my God, that was so
Thank you,
gorgeous.
Jenny. That was beautiful.
Wow. I'm sure everybody is applauding in their homes and their hearts. It's so nice to read with y'all and great to see you again, Jenny. It's been like 2 years. Wild. You look younger.
You look great too.
Thank you. And Kazim, it's so beautiful to be here to celebrate your book. As always, this is a book that teaches us what's possible in like breadth and clarity in terms of what a book of poems can hold. It's been such a gift to spend time with it before it was bound, and now to look at it as a bound object, and to be continually challenged by your writing and your imagination and vision. Also, thanks for being a consistent, brilliant mentor to me and a friend throughout my life. So it's like a real joy to be with you celebrating this feat of a collection. And I'm so hyped to hear you read out of it because I haven't heard you read any of these poems aloud. Holy cow. So that said, I'm gonna read for now 9 minutes of recent work. I've been doing this at the beginning of quarantine. I was doing a series of poems sort of remembering public sex that I had in the past and sort of feeling nostalgic for it. Nostalgia meaning like the illness of returning home, right? So this is one of those poems. I haven't read this one out and just recently re-edited it. There we are. It's called Gate Vista Point, Redwood City. All year, I've driven to this bench overlooking a river that splits the Redwood Preserve by the highway. This overlook where men secret off into shrubs to perform the ritual upon each other, where I imagine one kneels and the rest descend upon him. Truck drivers, delivery workers, salesmen. Oh, holy cow, this is the wrong draft of this poem. Rewind. Okay. All right, here we go. This overlook where men secret off into shrubs to perform the ritual upon each other, where I imagine one kneels and the rest descend upon him. Truck drivers, delivery men, programmers, anyone who takes 280 southbound knows well to pause here for refill, or revive, or refuel, or revile. I was driven here. I was driving. I drove myself. Something pulled me, a thread unraveling this cheap tuxedo. I knew somehow to exit, to pull over and get off. Overhead, turkey vultures circle. One airplane drags her long white coat down the aisle. Having yet to descend myself into branches, I come here now only to read beside this wilderness. Loaf with me a moment in the grasses as I page through this book of poems about crows. Here, I can believe nearly anything about the body. In my books, the branches' antlers are licked clean as sinners are redeemed in velvet. Finally, curious or brave, I do a loop, passing close as I dare to that main undergrowth thoroughfare, peering through gaps in the shrubs. Today, there is only one man, kneeling in neon knee pads alone, waiting for commuters to come make use of him, to make himself useful, alone as if in prayer, a statue trapped forever in its sacrifice, waiting to be preserved by touch, his throat a reliquary, ready to swallow what remains of the saints. Okay, so there's that new one. It's such a different experience to read out poems aloud that have only lived on your little documents. Okay, so this next one, for like 4 weeks, Kazim and I were sending poems back and forth to each other, and I'm excited to keep that up, girl.
I failed last week. I didn't send you anything. I know.
I fell off as well. And so this is one from that little generative cipher. It's when we're in the midst of blankets of smoke here from consistent wildfires. It's called Quarantine Adieu. A new app tells us whether it's safe to breathe. I haven't been outside in weeks. Afternoons sunbathe on the living room floor beneath the barred windows. It's grown sepia out there. A filter descended over the true face of the world. The little man in my phone's purple today wears a gas mask, recommends not riding a bicycle. I wipe ashes from my packages. My mail carrier, Chris, says it's the end of the fucking world. If anyone, he should know. Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night. Almost 2.5 millennia ago, we split Brussels, broccoli, kale, collards, kohlrabi, all from the same wild cabbage. Such imaginations humans have. It's a miracle life existed here at all, long as it has. Dope. Okay, so the next two poems my next book of poems was going to be a book about pigs, and so the next two are from that project, both like men and being a bottom and cops, you know. And this one I think is only in the collection because it gets its title from Piglet from Winnie the Pooh, and the title goes, "It's a little anxious to be a very small animal surrounded entirely by water," and so that's the title of the poem. The earth's been near sucked clean by plants grown to be eaten by animals, grown to be eaten by men. Forests plowed under and dirt filled in with good nitrogen. Farmers plant clover plants and spray feces so the cycle might continue uninterrupted onto dinner plates, or shaken up in a bag with spices, or hanged in industrial freezers waiting to be slow released back onto market. Whole states of soy. Corn plants waving their ears like hands dancing to haunt music. The pork boys who grew up on good American feed taste sweetest, sickly, sugar sweet. Corn syrup candied between teeth. Bacon grown in cages, America. That year I lived in my car, I broke bread and my neck on many of them. If not you, your cousin, or your cousin's cousin's friend. Stone years, where locusts awoke under skin as I climbed through car windows with an ethanol drip, as I was fed and refused to be feed in return, to be touched by anything other than the cruel distance of words, a fake name each time I unhinged my jaw. Call me Clover, pea shoot, alfalfa. Call me shit as I replenish these boys' bad soil, as I give and give to this country's unquenchable hunger. Call me private citizen. Call me patriot of the back seats of SUVs, of cemeteries wherever shadows fall into impromptu bedrooms. Call me a ride home. Our species eats, becomes beasts through eating. Let's be clear. We've outstayed our welcome here, unsustainable even sitting quietly in our bodies. America, from the Old English, means to eat and never fill, to kill with someone else's hands, to make the world empty for our children. Do you know how depleted I need to be to even want to suck some dick now? How many dead fields? How hungry the pigs? Researching this poem, I mistype into my phone, what plants give nitrogen back to the soul? The engine spits back all of them. Okay, there's that. All right, and then perfect timing. One last poem. So hyped for your reading, Kazim. And I wish we were all in the same space. My goodness. Oh, and big gratitude to Literati Bookstore. I loved reading there, and I hope you're able to continue to distribute books and sell books. What you do is so important. Okay, so this last one is called Xenotransplantation, which is the process of transplanting an animal organ into a human, right? And so my buddy with Marfan syndrome had a part of a pig's heart put into his heart. And so this is from that book too. All right. Steve's got a pig heart in him. Or Steve's got part of a pig's heart, a piece. His heart's part pig. The aortic valve is the dog god guarding the tube blood runs through once it's been scrubbed clean. One of two semi-lunar valves, which sounds like part of a moon, a piece. Steve's got moons in him, separating the two major atrium. Steve's full of ballrooms, those dark vaulted ceilings. Steve's a vegan. Steve's a vegan with a pig heart, thumping club music. Steve believes the pig in him is vegan too, since it eats what he eats, speaks when he speaks. The pig heart pulses in his chest like a reflection of the moon in a puddle out behind the club once we finish dancing. Steve takes drugs so his body doesn't reject the organ. Steve takes drugs so he can go on dancing. His pig, grown to be sewn into a man's ribs, unnaturally selected. No God could have predicted this. Still, holy the bit of tissue that lets him live and live. Thin filament that sent another 17 years going inside him. If you listen close with one ear to his chest, you can hear the pig heart singing. All I want is to live and live and live and live and live. Thanks a lot. Next up, make as much noise as you can in your living human bodies for the myth, the legend, Kazim Ali.
Thank you, Sam. That was a beautiful reading. And Jenny, that was so wonderful. It's so great to hear the new work as well. So I was writing with Jenny at the, maybe in quarantine, like 1.0, maybe at the beginning. And then Sam and I were writing together over the last maybe 6 weeks or something like that, although not recently. We both fell off, but just being in community with you both as artists was really wonderful. And of course, Sam and I go way, way back. And I've learned so much from you also about being a poet and being a human. So you're my mentor too, in ways. So it's so good to see everybody. Thank you for coming out. I thought I would read mostly from this new book, the Book of Sheila Chandra, and then maybe at the end, I want to make sure that there's a chance to at least, answer questions if anybody has any. But so I'll check. I'll do it based on time. At the end, I might read one of those poems that I wrote with Sam, and maybe one of the ones that I wrote when I was talking to Jenny, which she's also heard. So this book is made of 3 long poems. The first and the third are the first is one long poem, not in sections. So when I read from this book, I sometimes will read a page of that just to give people a flavor. The second poem is the title poem, The Voice of Sheila Chandra. It's made up of 40 sonnets. So it's kind of a sonnet sequence, but it's one long piece actually. And so that's what I actually thought I would read from tonight. I thought I would read individual pieces out of it. Sheila Chandra herself is a singer who can no longer sing. She lost her voice. So a lot of this book is about the creative practice as an artist. How do you live? Breaks is constant, was like the river, light on the river, riven that remained a rift, an old rill that sounded. She merged with the vibration of the drum, a hum, a home, womb, and she, moaned in the loam, dark earth, come, Sheila, dame, ocean, dome, this poem, roam to tome, tomb, foam, original fountain that fed my mom, Zamzam, when I was born. Who can, in syllables like Sheila Chandra, moan us covered in a blanket of sound, this like cloud bank of stars keeping us from eternity, which under the blanket seen, like Sanjay, a dancer who I somehow look like was mistook for 3 times in one day 20 years ago, but the story still resounds. Some woman at a festival saw him perform, swore I was he. I said I wasn't. She did not believe. That is a true story. Me, a brass bowl, soul, swindle through years, no identity theft. I want to move like that off the axis of the spine into where and where. Sanjay said, I am not him. And what does all this have to do with the voice of Sheila Chandra? She, having lost, having now no longer sound, now a constant striking into chaos, that note that flickers through in abstraction is one or 0 and confused. The ear does not focus, neither opens nor closes, always is. Long before she lost it, drifts unanchored, wanted to merge and the body of the singer become the body of the instrument. Talk to the drum, find it, hum, study its vowels. She made her vow to sound slowly, syllable by syllable. She pronounced words in Uzbek, word unmoored, word pure sound, O river. Long had I been, long seasons invaded by your current, devoured your tongue of water, those years, time, bent, my one voice spoke. So I think you can tell a little bit that the poems, the sonnets in this book, like turn multiply, and that the break on the line is not always the break on the phrase, and sometimes there's a little bit of a before and after. So there's a place of indeterminacy, real indeterminacy. Carried cacophony, world wheel into the human, one small voice, box, pool, swum, midnight we went into the sea, expecting our prayers might carry themselves across the silver slammed surface, would be answered, or do they answer? Pale cut of prayers do not answer. Like back into the dark water, what are those stripes of light across the room, a shape that evaporates upon waking? What language cannot hold on to, what you cannot hold on to. So in honor of Sammy's poem about pelvic sex, what the hell? Closer, closer the wire against my shins warns me from falling blue into the painting. Is always a web, each cell holding a prisoner of thought. Wire is God, where is what might go through that cute, short, thick, bearded guy's mind with the tape measure and the keys on his belt. I've been following, holds the bathroom door open 1 second too long, and I nearly follow him inside, but body language is hard to read. I stayed with the painting, and now he too is staring into the islands and writing Agnes motherfucker Martin into his notebook. Also a true story. The Guggenheim. I want to skip over a little bit and do a few more from the ending part of the poem. Oh no, maybe. No, I decline. I'm going to keep reading because the one that Jenny actually read from is in here. So I figure I'll read the whole thing. Smoke, a voice hits all the notes at once. Devotional or pop song or drone, same difference. Talk now, body as stone. I am walking backwards from death through porn and prayer. And why shouldn't I fuck a stranger in the bathroom of the Guggenheim while someone bangs on the door? Return to unknowing where Sheila found me, where who found me? Dog, star, my friend, neither day nor night, nor behind the wire, but tell in the fragile body what's next. How did I get caught? Not listening when what happened, the fortune teller told. Now do I always return to the tenor stricken? I have no fear of God, but of being this archangel unfolding to emerge from God into form. How untoward. Above and below the line of having lived, I abstain, bound to the horizon, not earth, not sky, not Sheila. Sings, the voice, breaks, bodies break, the stations of the cross, or those Jewish texts that blank out one vowel. Unspeakable Zen mind is not empty mind, but a mind river that knows it flows. Let me get there past years or drink or sex. When I saw my friend's dog after a decade, he only wanted to look at me, lick me, smell me. Okay. How to transcribe what flickers. I feel like this is an ars poetica for this whole book because yeah, I'm trying in language to capture something that moves quite beyond me. And so, you know, Donald Ravel has this quote about poetry that I really love. He says, you can't find poetry in poems. Poems are what's left after poetry passes through a place. And so I love that idea of the poem as a sense record and nothing more and nothing less than that, that the real experience is the breath of moving through it in the body of the writer. How to transcribe what flickers, what is not fixed, that voice, letters made, not of ink, but light, not words of fire on stone. How do you transcribe the blank vowel, all the after that aerates, not disappear, but settle down through air? You do not want to say, but sing. Where might be rain, be sky, come down by snow, but no, you invite it to cover you, the blanket, your coat, a heavy pressure, God, pressure of rain. You want to start the song over, but do not dare to be ready. No tune, no cadence, nothing to pick up, no bridge to cross, now to be small again, break through. There is no beginning to any song. Only the place the singer picks up the tune. And then I think maybe I will just do 2 more poems here. This poem is like an Oberlin poem. I lived in Oberlin for many years, 12 beginning to end, with like times off in between here and there. And of course, Oberlin is where I met Sam, though close to the end of your time there, I think, Sam. So this poem is like, in Oberlin is like in Cheers, the bar where everyone knows your name. You know, you go into the bar, the coffee shop, the frozen food section at the grocery store. Like it's like Hogwarts, sort of, or Hogsmeade, whatever the town is. So this is, and then of course there's a complicated part of that, which is like, sometimes you don't want to see that person, you know? At the cafe on a Sunday morning, you spot your friend across the room who is maybe in a hurry and pretends not to see you. And you've forgotten your glasses, so you can pretend you did not notice her, pretending she did not see you. Outside, there is a river and everyone is waiting. How boring God is everywhere. How boring we all are. Water, she'd rather face the rain than say hello or continue the line of the painful fiction, impossible to see this voice, impossible to map such failure. How finished, nothing, night, day that I drain. And then I'll close on this one. Thank you guys so much for being with me here. It's really so special. What represses, unhomes in the sound? Who has made me? What is made me? Is a voice just muscles and shape and breath to phrase a song, boat, assemble at the mouth of the harbor, mouth in earth, you who wrote an ode to silence, never wrote of what is silenced. I did seek all resounding caves. Let the voice be lit. All the lanterns in the new world, we need the language of stone from string to string, quiver in the opening, the garden. So beautiful, Lucifer, dark son of morning. No Eden, but innocence. No expulsion, but after. Thank you for listening, everybody. It was really nice to read to you, even though I can't see your faces, but I see your names.
It was so good to hear the poems in this book.
Thank you. I feel like a little, so I feel super excited about this book. I feel like I just allowed myself and, decided not to worry about, who was going to read it or what kind of trouble they would have. But it is it's a pleasure to read it out loud. As much insofar as it's like a transcript of breath on the page. But I wonder that, Ilya Kaminsky, the lovely dear Ilya, because of the way he recites as well, would hand out copies of his book so you could hear him and look at what was on the page. And there's some part of me feels like I would like to do that with this book. Because the line breaks are like that. And then the puns are so extreme in terms of the ways that words turn on each other in sound. But it was a pure pleasure for me to write. It was very close to writing music for me, maybe more so than a normal compositional pattern. And as you can tell, I'm in love with indeterminacy, and I'm in love with like sort of slippage and confusion as a potential state for enlightenment. It's, that's important to me as a confused person perennially. So.
Well, I think it sings on the page too, Kazim, but it just felt like bonus to get to hear you read it.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm so glad you chose the poems that you chose to read, Jenny. I'm looking forward to, seeing the new, whatever the new project is going to be. Who knows how it develops, Do you find it, do you find yourself constrained in any way? Like sometimes I feel like when I begin a project, then it's like, oh, I have to go, where are you in it right now? I guess I want to know.
I'm trying to just kind of stay light on my feet and just sort of just keep accumulating poems. And I can see the resonances, but I'm trying not to get too attached to it having to go in a certain direction. So I'm probably still kind of early on, but maybe not. I can't tell. Yeah. Thanks for asking.
It's interesting, but I feel like both you and Sam, I guess maybe this is for everybody, but I feel like both you and Sam have like made a little bit of a turn from the previous book. But I mean, that book is 2017, so it's already 3 years ago, right? So of course you're in, and Sam, I don't remember between Madness and Bury It. I know that they were published in a certain order, but written in a different order, right? So it's sort of, yeah.
I think I feel like I'm in a place where I'm also just trying to get to the next poem always, right, and sort of think of each thing as an exercise until it like becomes more than that, and then I assemble it afterwards. Has sort of been my what sort of I'm curious about this project of this book in particular. Well, I want to hear Jenny's answer as well to that question. So I'll ask my question after.
Wait, what's the question?
It's about like a turn between projects.
Like a formal turn, a little bit of a different approach to form, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just trying to go deeper, but I'm not really sure what that means exactly. But I feel like I'm trying to like just hold my attention longer, whether in an image or in a sound or even with like an inquiry. And also, I guess in my first book, I was like playing off Hopkins and playing off some traditions. And maybe right now I just feel like I'm just trying to, I've just been reading a lot of Audre Lorde and Adrienne Rich. So they've been just like, I'm reading different people. So that sort of changes the shade of the direction that you move. Yeah.
For sure.
Jenny, are you still writing plays?
I've taken a pause.
Am I frozen?
I feel like that's still back there too. Yeah. I don't know. I actually have to go. I don't want to go.
Jenny has to leave us, everybody. So we'll say goodbye.
Sorry.
Thanks for joining us. Go teach lucky students.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.
And Kazim, my question for you, I resonates with Allison's question, who wrote something in the Q&A. Allison asked, great question, back to Kazim. Did you feel constrained by the sonnet long form you chose in this book? And that sort of twins with my question about form in general, and what sort of possibilities length offers you, and in this project in particular.
Yeah, I mean, this question between you and me, this question goes specifically between you and me, not between you and me, like we're keeping a secret, but this question goes back a while, right? Like it was, I think, summer of 2015 that we were all together in Lambda, and was really thinking about, there were a number of spoken word poets who primarily worked in spoken word, whereas were a part of that summer session. And, you know, some of the conversations that we were having were, you know, it's like very appropriate, and also I think the contemporary kind of a thing to draw spoken word in as a genre of poetry, and respect it the way it should be respected as poetry, instead of it being like this sort of like step sibling. But the conversations that we were having at that time were, how were spoken word pieces actually different than a poetry on a page? Like, what qualities does that type of work have to live in performance and in that mode that is separate from poetry on a page? And so some of the things we talked about were, you know, repetition, or like maybe sometimes more of a dramatic or narrative arc that kind of held the piece together. And then one of the other things that we really did talk a lot about was length. And it was an interesting flip, because the people who'd worked primarily in spoken word were saying like, well, I finally feel like I have permission to just write a short poem, that every poem doesn't have to be like 2.5 to 3 pages long, or whatever the standard length of like what a performance ought to be, you know? And then I was thinking, as a poet, because I primarily worked in super short lyrics, like in my book Skyward, there's probably like 3 or 4 poems that are longer than a single page. They're mostly all quite brief. And I felt this incredible desire to kind of stretch out and do a longer poem in which one could create an arc and could move around a little bit. And so I've actually moved into that mode in my book Inquisition that came out in 2018. Mm-hmm. And those are some of the poems that you saw the earliest, actually, Sam, like the Earthquake Days and some of those other poems that were like 3, 4, 5 pages long. So anyhow, I'm sorry, what?
There's origin. I was naming other poems.
Origin story, yeah. So anyhow, to make a long story short, I had done a book about 11 years ago called Bright Felon, which is these long prose poems, like 5 pages long or 6 pages long. And so I started to get really into that. And so the first poem in this book is called Hesperine for David Berger. It's about 11 or 12 pages long. I forget. It's 11 or 12 pages in manuscript. I forget how long it is in the actual book. And then that really just opened me up towards thinking about the long poem. But as Allison asked about, did I feel constrained by the sonnet form? I actually felt liberated by it. Mm-hmm. It allowed me to take this like incredible mass of material that I had and actually contain it in these little, you know, little boxes. And then the third long poem that's in this book is also in a modular form where it has 2 different modes. It has like a regular prose, like stanza mode, but then it has these sections that are like, I don't know if you can see it. They're like almost like word grids, little single letters, but they do spell out actually words. So they look like little ticker tapes. And so the poem kind of alternates between those 2 modes. So I feel really liberated. I feel very liberated by form. It enables me to work. In a way, it's like there's an armature or an architecture in which to start to approach the kind of more, whatever the formlessness of the draft was, or just the chaos of thought. So every time I write any poem, I always start to like inch my way towards the form, even before I know what the poem's really about. And then as that instinct comes into play of like what, long line, long poem, short poem, like that actually helps, that becomes part of the writing process and helps me to figure out what a poem is really even about.
Beautiful. And then Allison asked another question that pairs with my next question for you, which is perfect. But Allison wrote, Sam, you asked Jenny about writing plays, and Kazim mentioned music and writing music. Do either of you create in other genres? If so, what, and what do you enjoy about it? And I'm interested to hear your response, but how it sort of like twins with my question is, I was thinking a lot about fasting for Ramadan, your book, and how that is sequential and also like can be read as like a singular long text. And I was wondering if like how sort of the experience of writing these like a continued form like that differs from making these poems. Like, is it because it's more like memoir, which I've heard you described it as, or?
I mean, I love writing those long lyrical prose books, like Fasting for Ramadan, and Silver Road was like that too, and Bright Felon, of course. And then I have this other book, it's called Wind Instrument, but it was published in a limited edition. So, and it's out of print, so you can't really get it, but that's another book. It's about 70 pages long. I mean, I've tried to publish it commercially. Nobody wants to do it yet. So if you're a small press publisher on this call and you're interested, I'm happy to send it to you. But I just love the idea of those types of poetic prose writings are, to me, like, it's pure writing without intent or direction. Like, you don't know where you're going to end up. And there's something really beautiful about that, because when I'm writing poetry, there always moves into it this question of attention or aboutness. And with a book like Wind Instrument, there's no aboutness. It's just writing. It's just my writing. And I do feel that way about Bright Felon, even though there is meaning that is read out of that book, of course, but it wasn't in the writing. The writing didn't have that intention to me. The writing just, it was itself in a way. So it felt really pure to me and pleasurable to write. I also do write fiction. I wrote some kind of more experimental fiction. I wrote a book of short stories that's maybe more quote unquote realist kind of fiction. I'm currently writing a queer-friendly YA choose your own adventure novel with a fantasy, which is a fantasy novel, which should be out in September, I think, if I can finish it in time. So that's exciting. I mean, I just do lots of different things. I did explore other art forms, like as ways of just exploring creativity. So I've done paintings in the past. That's actually, oh no, it's not hanging up anymore. There was a painting of mine hanging right over there, but we took it down. And I studied, when I did my MFA at NYU, rather than do my secondary classes in literature, I did them in the dance department. So that was fun. And I danced for a few years after with a little company, very small. So it's just different ways of using your body and using your, creative mind, like to paint or to dance or to play music. If one could, I can't. It's so different than the verbal art of language and creating poetry. Although I do think there's quite a connection between poetry and dance in terms of the embodiment that is involved in both of them. Yeah. So what about you? Do you work in any different forms?
I play music. I play the guitar and I sing songs. And I work. And I'm also working on a novel right now that's sort of like a lyric fragmented little thing. But yeah, I really like playing music because it's just for myself or whomever is following my Instagram story.
I love music so much that I feel like if I could have sang, I probably would have been a singer. I don't know if I would have ended up being a poet. I mean, I love it so much, but I am one of those people where it's like, even when I sing in the shower, it doesn't sound that good.
Well, thank goodness the poems sing.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Do we have any more in the chat? Maybe not. Hey there. Hey, Literati.
Hi. Yes, there's a question. I mean, there's a question. We can't ask Jenny because she left, about what the title of her second poem was, and there's a question, Sam. Someone wanted to know what the title of the second poem that you read was.
Oh. Well, right now it's called Quarantine à Deux.
That's right.
It's French, but who knows if that'll ever be in the world. Or I can send it to you if you're interested, whomever is. Yeah.
And then Kazim, someone wanted to know, they taught French at Oberlin in the spring of 2000 and wanted to know Wow.
MPI there.
Yeah, what department you taught in?
Yeah, I was at Oberlin from 2007 until 2018. End of 2018, actually. So I was there for 12 academic years. And I taught in creative writing and comparative literature. So I had a lot of friends in the French department. Janice Zinser, when Libby Murphy and I were co-translating, Libby Murphy was a professor in the French department. We co-translated Marguerite Duras' novel L'Amour together. And Janet was our, because she's a Duras expert. So she sat down with us and looked at the translation and talked us through a lot of stuff. So yeah, Oberlin French department.
Well, we are at the top of the hour. I do think I should ask the one sort of perseverating bookseller question, which we like to close out our events with, which is if you're willing to share what books you're currently reading and enjoying that people who are watching this might be able to purchase, in addition to your books, of course, which they can purchase at the link that I've supplied in the chat.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at a couple of books right now. I'm doing an event in a couple of weeks with Joshua Bennett for the Academy of American Poets. So I hope you'll check his book out, Ode, OWED, and I hope you'll come to, I hope that you all will come to the event. My website, kazimali.com/calendar.html has all the info, or you can go to Twitter and find me at Kazim Ali Poet, and I keep all the information out. But the other two books I'm looking at right now, this one called The Clearing by Alison Adair. See that? And there's this one, Adam Clay, who's a wonderful poet whose work I've been following for about 10 years. I'm looking at his new book, To Make Room for the Sea. And yeah, these are two of the poetry books that I'm reading right now. I'm normally reading like 10 million books at once. So it's hard to choose only two. I chose these two because they're sitting right here.
Yeah. I got to go to a Real Deal bookstore recently and just broke down crying and then spent like $300. But I picked up Bethany Birdsong's first book, Negotiations, which is stunning. My teacher, who just passed, Van Bolen, has a posthumous collection called The Historians, which just came out as well, and is gorgeous. What did I love? I loved Srikanth Reddy's new book called Underworld Lit.
I want to read that.
It's wild. I've never read anything like it before. Yeah,
I read he published part of it in a chapbook with Omnidon a couple of years ago.
Gorgeous.
He's like the lit professor, and his like sort of he goes to hell or something like that.
That's right, and like passes through all the various underworlds.
It's like
getting cancer and stuff.
Is it a book of poetry or is it an allegory for academic life?
Yeah, it's really neat. And I'm also reading Walden, because I never have. Yeah. But I wouldn't recommend buying. There are other books to support, I think. Thoreau.
Well, thank you for those suggestions. And if people are interested in especially in Destiny Birdsong's collection, she'll be reading with our friend Molly Spencer for her book release of her new collection Hinge on October 29th with Molly McCulley Brown and Elisa Sachin and Marissa Siegel moderating from Tin House. And you can purchase the rest of the books that Kazim and Sam mentioned at LiteratiBookstore.com, in addition to their books, including The Voice of Sheila Chandra. Sam and Kazim, thank you so much for joining us at Home with Literati this evening. We appreciate it so much. Hope you both continue to stay safe and well, and hope to have you both in Literati's event space sometime soon on the other side of crazy times. But until then, take care. And to all of our attendees, thank you for joining us this evening. And we look forward to seeing you at the next event.
Thank you.
All. Good night.
Yeah.
Bye.